Good day. It is Tuesday, and welcome to another Tuesday with Thom, brought to you by the Best Girl Consulting Firm. You're interested in being a Tuesday for Thom sponsor? Check us out at bestgirl.com, or you can contact me at Thom, Thom, at bestgirl.com. So Barbara Wallace Edwards and Mychal Walker are here as our regular guests, and Kendall Simmons is here as our special G-list guest. Now, Hollywood, of course, has the A-list, and here on Tuesday with Thom, we've got the G-list. Kendall is an analyst for Auburn University's football team, and he's going to tell us what that is and exactly why it is different from being a coach. He is a two-time Super Bowl champion with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and since retiring, he's been a spokesperson in the fight against diabetes. It's Tuesday, October 13th, and we are 21 days from the big election, and I'm sure you have heard that there will not be a debate this week. I mean, we weren't going to learn anything new anyway, were we? So remember this. Pay just as much attention to your local elections, county elections, city elections, and the issues and the people on those ballots, because they will affect your everyday life more often than the presidential election. Well, I hope things in your life are well. I hope you're counting your blessings, and these past 7 days have been good to you. Hurricane Delta did miss us, which is great for us, but little consolation for the people in Lake Charles, Louisiana. They were hit for the second time in a month. Over 600,000 people in the state were without power on this past Saturday morning. And you know, you can go without power for a couple of hours. You can go without power for maybe even a day. We went without power once for Hurricane Ivan for 8 days. And I can tell you, you think it's been tough quarantining. You go without power for 8 days, and it's really, really tough. So let's remember those people in Louisiana in our thoughts and in our prayers. And because I can tell you that it's tough, and it can even get depressing. So sometimes you say, well, you know, we were lucky, but you have to remember, when you're lucky, somebody else may be unlucky. So there are many people in Louisiana today without power, without their homes, and without necessities. Speaking of the weather, it's going to cool off this week. As a matter of fact, in the Panhandle, it's supposed to be 58 degrees tonight. I think Thursday night in New York City, it's supposed to be 38 degrees. So in other happenings over this past week, COVID-19 continues to dominate the news, and it is not going to go away, folks. It is not going to disappear. Last week, COVID cases hit a 2-month high with 31 states. I'm going to say 31 states reporting record increases. Midwestern states, Indiana, Minnesota, Missouri, Ohio, and Wisconsin and Illinois recorded over 3,000 new cases 2 days in a row, a 2-day trend that we haven't seen since the height of the previous outbreak in the spring. Unfortunately, 20,000 more Americans will die from COVID in the month of October, and we're already halfway through the month. It's predicted by February that there'll be 400,000 deaths in the United States. In other COVID news, Tennessee Titans and the New England Patriots closed their facilities again after more positive tests. Patriots-Broncos game was postponed. And I found this interesting. Sometimes you play politics and sometimes you don't. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has gotten it. Mitch McConnell says, I haven't been to the White House since August the 6th because my impression was their approach to how to handle this was different than mine and what I insisted that we do in the Senate, which is to wear a mask and to practice social distancing. But you still see people walking around without their mask and participating in group functions without social distancing. Living in a vacation spot, we see people come down for their mini vacations or for their weekends, no mask, no social distancing, and I can tell you that we're not going to defeat this thing like that, folks. So hopefully there will be a vaccine in our futures. So let me introduce my two roundtable guests, Barbara Wallace Edwards and Mychal Walker. Barbara Wallace Edwards is from Birmingham, Alabama. She retired from Blue Cross and Blue Shield. Barbara, how are you doing this morning?
Good morning, Tom, and good morning, everyone else. I'm blessed. I'm here. As I was explaining to you earlier, I've had some issues, household issues going on. As you can see, I have two refrigerators sitting in my kitchen right now. Hopefully, to get that resolved later today. But yeah, I've been busy being a grown up lately, handling issues around the house.
Refrigerator stories is what they call it. So you got some tales, huh?
I have some tales. This is a long one, so we don't want to get into the details, but it's not pretty.
Okay, well, let's introduce our other guest, Mychal Walker. Mychal is from Atlanta, Georgia. He is the president of the Walker Agency, a full service insurance brokerage. And Mychal always gives us insurance tips. Mychal, how are you doing this morning?
Good morning, Tom. I'm doing well. I hope you are too. And good morning, Barbara Wallace Edwards. How are you?
Morning.
So, what's happening with you today, Mychal?
Well, Tom, I have to tell you, in addition to COVID being front and center, which is a part of healthcare, healthcare is also going to be front and center with this new election period. There's just a little bit of good news that I came across, and that is like the average premium for family insurance is up 4% this year. That's not a big increase. Now, when you turn that into dollars, that's more than $21,000. However, the employers are paying the tab. They're picking up on it. Most average workers are not being asked to pay more in premiums for family coverage, and those with individual coverage through their employers aren't being asked to pay increases in deductions. That's what a survey by the Kaiser Family Foundation came up with last Thursday. Now, you may ask, why is it such a low increase this year? The reason being is because insurance, they base their rates on the previous year. So when these rates were filed, unemployment was at an all-time low. And what employers were doing was they were using benefits as an enticement or an incentive to keep and retain employees or to get more employees to make their businesses go. You may see a slight adjustment coming next year because right now we don't know exactly how it's going to shake out due to the pandemic. I will tell you this, that I have gotten information that insurance companies made record profits because people were putting off elective surgeries or options, or they just weren't going to the hospital because of the overwhelming demand for COVID. One other interesting thing of note, just to show you a historical perspective, back in 1999, the average premium for a family coverage was $5,791, a fraction of this year's average premium of $21,342.
Wow.
And just since 2010, family premium have increased 55% at a much faster rate than wages, which is 27%, and inflation 11%. So
Wow.
that's why we got to do something about this.
Okay, well, we certainly appreciate that. Now, Mychal, you're in Atlanta, so if you give us valuable information, if somebody wants to get in touch with you regarding insurance, just for information purposes, of course, I know you want them to buy a policy, but for information purposes, how do they get in touch with you?
Well, they can call me toll free at 1-855 Walker 2. 1-855 Walker 2.
Okay, well, thank you. So let's talk a little bit about the COVID and the economy. And often when we talk about the economy, it's a big thing. We got to open up the businesses to get the economy back. But when we talk about the economy, we generally think of the stock market and big corporate business. And very seldom do we talk about the small mom and pop's business, which is generally the backbone in a lot of our communities. So let's talk a little bit. I'd like to talk about the big corporate business, but also the small mom and pops. And I want to talk about the corporate business from this standpoint. One of my friends, Thom Noonan, who's a Hollywood insider, writes an article for Forbes, and he wrote an article last week called "Movie Chains Officially Closed." So Cineworld and Odeon have both announced that they are closing 500 theaters around the world, not just in the United States, but around the world. At the same time, Disney has said that they can make more money streaming than they can put movies into the theaters. And so I'm going to start this off by just asking, first of all, when's the last time either one of you been inside of a theater?
I mean, it was definitely back in 2019 for me. I haven't been inside a theater this year. I'm not. I don't think I'm interested in going. Not
Okay.
anytime soon.
Mychal?
You know, this,
Well, I honestly can't remember, but I would have to agree with Barbara. It had to be last year sometime. Um, and I would definitely, it may have been right before COVID hit. I may have gone to see one show before then, but it's been a while.
I grew up going to the movies, and I love going to the movie theaters. I think the last time, matter of fact, my wife and I, one of the things we loved about Los Angeles was the independent movie chain, the Limley. And my wife would always, for my birthday or for special days, would buy me gift cards to the Limley. And we flew to Los Angeles last week, and we had all this last December, last Christmas. We had all these gift cards, and we went to the movies about 5 days in a row. It was great. It was a lot of fun. So what they're doing in the theaters now to try and get you to go back to the theaters, the seating is at a 33% capacity.
mm-hmm.
So there's socially distanced seating. You have to wear your mask unless you're trying to eat your popcorn or what have you. But customers still aren't coming back. You know, during its heyday, Americans would sometimes go to the movies twice a week. In 2019, the average American visited the movie theaters 3 to 5 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when we talk about getting back to normal, again, I'll say it again, I think that there will be a new normal. And what that normal will be, who knows what that will look like. Barbara?
Right. And Tom, when you think about it, even though the theaters are saying, the capacity is only 33%, you're sitting in a seat in a theater for 90 minutes to 2 hours in an enclosed environment. So you're breathing the same air as someone else. They're going to take off that mess, eat their popcorn or whatever the snacks they're eating. So you just don't feel real safe, even though there may not be one sitting in the row next to you or right behind you. That's still questionable as to whether that air is very clean and sanitized. So I would still be hesitant, and I think that's going to last for quite some time. I don't know what our new normal is going to look like, but I don't think we'll ever get back to where we were before, especially since there's no vaccine available right now. And I just recently read that Johnson and Johnson has stopped their vaccine testing because one of the participants became very, very ill. So we're not sure where this is going.
Okay, Mychal?
Well, a couple things. One thing, I just want to go back to nostalgia. Thom, you talked about growing up and going to the movies. I remember in the summer when I was growing up, that was one of our favorite pastimes because on Tuesday, you remember the RC Cola?
Yeah.
We used to have at the theater in Auburn, there was 6 bottle tops from RC Colas and 25 cents, and you could get into the movie on Tuesday, and all of those things that we grew up around the theaters. And I know you recall the days you go into a movie to see a G-rated movie this week, and then you go next week and sneak into an R-rated movie and stuff. All of that was part of fun growing up. It was mischief, but it wasn't getting into a lot of trouble. It was just having fun, and those, getting into the dark theater and sharing a moment with people that you don't know because you're all fixated on the screen,
Mm-hmm.
and like you're saying, we may not go back to that. I know that speaking of what Barbara was saying about the purification of the air and what have you, I know that there are different systems out there now, and I would think that the movie chain owners would look to invest in that. And I have a friend of mine who's a dentist, and I was talking to him recently about how COVID has impacted his business because, again, you're right up on someone doing dental work, and he said, actually, my practice has been busier than it ever has been. And he said, but what I did was I invested in a air purification system It's a vac that pulls air out, purifies it, and sends it back in, and is constantly recycling. And
Mhm.
he went into the details. It was something I had never heard about before, but he's able to measure, the air and how purified it is, how clean it is, and everybody feels safe. And he's doing a bang up job. So I would think that more businesses would look to do that. I've heard that some restaurants may start to look to do that or what have you. But you're right. We've got to change and move forward some way, and we can't just necessarily sit back and wait on a vaccine.
I think we can't sit back and wait and think that things are going to get a vaccine, things are going to happen. We're just going to go back to doing what we were doing. I just don't see it happening
Wow.
that way. And there are some businesses who are doing pretty well. I think businesses who have made the adjustments, like that dentist, businesses who have learned to do things through virtual methods
Right.
to adjust what it is they're doing. And in a couple of cases we've been involved in, normally you go to a big seminar and they have a keynote speaker, and that person gets up and talks 45-50 minutes.
Mhm.
Well, to do it virtual, we've learned to cut that down to 20 minutes, to 15
Right.
to 20 minutes. We've learned to do it on the television model, whereas
Mhm.
when you sit down to watch television, you watch it for about 15 to 18 minutes, and then there are commercials. And
Right.
so there's a mental break there with maybe a physical break as well. I think a lot of mom and pops, and when I say mom and pops businesses, I generally consider less than 10 employees, particularly ones who have like groceries and communities and so on and so forth. I think they're surviving pretty well because of their relationships. And one of the things that's happened in corporate America is I think they've lost a lot of their relationships, particularly with the
Yes.
smaller, with people who aren't at this level of society, the working class people and so on and so forth. When you call now, you got an issue. You got an issue with your refrigerator.
Yes.
You gotta be on hold for 15 or 20 minutes and listen to this recorder and tell you how much they value your call, but
Right.
they're wasting your time for 15 or 20 minutes. Whereas if somebody could answer that phone and put you right to where you need to be, I think it certainly would I consider that more value than a recording.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I actually went through that last week after having some issues with, my purchase, had to make, I don't know, 4 or 5 different phone calls. And every time I was on hold at least 15 minutes, minimum it's 15 minutes. And then I'd get someone to speak to someone and they couldn't help me. They transferred me somewhere else and I was on hold another 15, 20 minutes. And it was so frustrating. I got up and actually went to a store, started shopping for refrigerators, and I shared with you. I actually had to go to 3 different stores before I was able to get someone to help me within a
Wow.
reasonable amount of time. I'm not going to spend my money and then wait for them to help me. Um, on a different note, I actually was out shopping on Saturday for a birthday gift for someone. Ended up in Belk's department store, and um, the lines were horrendous. They had 2 cash registers open on each floor. There's a two-story
God.
store there, and they had 2 registers open, 20, 30 people in line at each of those registers. I finally said, "Forget it. I'll come back at a time that may not be as busy." And went back on Sunday afternoon. It was just as bad. I decided I'm gonna order something by mail, and I'm normally not a person that orders a lot through the mail, but this was so frustrating. I finally just gave up. It was ridiculous.
You ordered a refrigerator through the mail?
Online, online. I actually
Oh,
ordered, had it paid for it online.
man.
Yes, because
You
it was
know,
ridiculous. I'd
it's
gone into the
interesting.
store and saw what I wanted, but
Yeah.
I couldn't get anyone to help me, so I finally said, "Forget this." I actually paid for it online and then went back to the store and finalized the transaction and confirmed the delivery.
We bought a refrigerator and it wouldn't work.
Mhm.
So we called the repair guy. We didn't have it but a week and a half. he said it had never had any refrigerant in it, so it had thus burned up all the stuff in it.
Wow.
So we had to call them to tell them to come get it. And rather than go online or call, I just rode over to the store and I got this guy. Well, actually, I called and he was so friendly and so willing to help me. I said, "Don't you go anywhere. I'll be over there in a few minutes." And it actually worked out. Mychal, in your business, I'm sure relationships are what matter.
Absolutely. Yes. And, a part of my business is the over 65 market, or what they call the senior market. And we're now coming up on Medicare annual enrollment. So a lot of the carriers and agents are trying to figure out what's going on. And it's so interesting. Most recently, we had a virtual conference, and we were sharing ideas and stories about how to approach seniors, because they're the most vulnerable now at this particular time with coronavirus. And there are stories of one agent who prepared a package, an enrollment kit for a senior, called her and went by the house and put it in the mailbox out front the door, then got in his car and went and drove around the corner and sat and waited till she went out and got it, took it in, signed it, went back and put it in the mailbox and called it. And he came back and picked it up because she didn't want him to come in the house. We have one carrier, as a matter of fact, Barbara's old company, it's called Anthem here. So it depends on which state, whether it's Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Anthem, or whatever.
Right.
One of their sales managers said that they have face shields, just like you see the NFL coaches on the TV with. And so I asked her, well, show us your face shield. And so she had her son to go and get it and brought it in. It was a face shield to come down over her face that had Anthem on it and what have you, and had some gloves so that they could go in and talk to the seniors and what have you. So it's a lot of different things going, but some of the more technological advances we're making is, especially those that do have an email, we can, one, do a link after we put together the application and send a link. They can sign it, and then we can submit it that way. We have voice recognition signatures now that's coming up, where you can record the person on the phone saying, yes, we agree to do that. That's one way of doing it. And there are some Zoom meetings there. Some of the companies are setting up different accounts so that agents can maybe speak with people that have the savvy and the internet wherewithal to do that, but my main concern are those seniors that are not internet savvy. And I guess we'll have to do what that other agent did, which is either send it to them by mail and have them sign it with a self-stamped address envelope, and then they can return it back to you, or you just go by their house and put it on the front porch and walk away and let them pick it up and sign it and go back and get it. So we're having to adapt.
Yeah, well, and again, that's the point. I think we're having to adapt. I think that we'll continue to adapt, and that I know that there is a lot of fatigue with people who are having to stay home, particularly if you've got children, not just small children, but teens or what have you. I'm sure that that's a tough thing, but that's better than being sick. And so hopefully we'll continue to adjust and move things forward. Any final comments before we move on, Barbara?
Well, Thom, I was looking at something the other night that said that people who have services where they're actually coming to the home, like landscapers, consultants, attorneys, where they can actually talk to you, do things online, yoga studios who are making adjustments, and actually performing services online where they can actually do a live event. Those businesses are probably a little bit more stable right now than some of the other companies where you actually had to go out into the business. So people are definitely having to make adjustments to stay in business. Some of the mom and pop shops are doing a little bit better because people don't want to travel as far to go to a larger discount store. They don't want to be in large crowds. So in smaller cities, mom and pop shops seems to be faring better than larger businesses would. So there are a lot of changes that are happening as a result of COVID.
Okay, Mychal, you want to sum up?
Well, it's just funny. sometimes the more things stay the same, the more they change, so to speak. And that's the opposite way of putting it. But I guess like they used to tell me all the time, the one thing that's constant in life is change.
There it is.
Okay. And we as individuals, we resist change. But now we're in a time where everybody has to face it and look to change for the better of the greater good.
It's interesting that you say that. I spoke to a class last week, and that was one of the things I told them. Change is the only constant in life. And that ever since I was born, there's just been change after change after change. I mean, broad television came in the 50s, and broadcast television was like the computer of the day. It's like the cell phone of the day. It brought the world into our homes every evening. 1963, the president of the United States gets killed riding in a car in Dallas. 5 years later, Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy are killed. A few years after that, the president of the United States has to resign, and so on and so forth. And so there's always been change. We just have to adjust and to try and roll with it as best as we can. So thank you, guys. Let me move on, and we're going to go to our message from Best Girl, who is our sponsor. And I think let's hear from Best Girl. Today's show is sponsored by Best Girl Inc. What is Best Girl? Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access, and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Our clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. We have a team of consultants led by Joyce Gilly Gossom and Miss Emily Hedrick, and they partner with business and education business clients to promote organizational effectiveness and education, motivation, and leadership. Our customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communications, executive coaching, fundraising, and some economic development. All right. If you're interested in being a sponsor of Tuesdays with Thom, just contact us at bestgirl.com or thom@bestgirl.com. And now we're going to go to the G list. Hollywood has its A list, and Tuesdays with Thom has its G list. And the G list is where everybody is a star. So my guest today is Kendall Simmons. Let me just tell you a little bit about Kendall. He's originally from Ripley, Mississippi. We'll have to find out exactly where Ripley is. He was a 3-year starter at Ripley High School, where he was named All-State and Prep Star All Ripley High, where he was named, Prep Star All-American selection. I'm sorry, as a senior defensive lineman after a season where he recorded 70 tackles, 4 sacks, forced 5 fumbles, and returned 1 of them for a touchdown. He was named the district defensive most valuable player and was voted the Clarion Ledger, which is a paper in Mississippi, top 10 and number 2 offensive line prospect in Mississippi. He was a commercial appeal, which is a Memphis newspaper, Mid-South top 100, and was chosen to play in the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game. He also played baseball and basketball. So let's welcome Kendall Simmons to Tuesdays with Thom. Kendall, how are you, man?
I'm good. How's it going, Miss Gossom?
Doing great. Let me start at the top. Tell me about winning 2 Super Bowls, man. I mean, if you win 1 Super Bowl, that's great, but you won 2 Super Bowls.
Man, I'm gonna try to keep it short and sweet. It's really hard to explain. Winning the first one was so big because 2 years before that, the first year I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. The next year, I blew my ACL out. So for 2 years, I was challenged in staying on the field and being healthy. And then that following season, I started all 20 games, including preseason, to win Super Bowl 40, be a part of that team. So to me, that's the most special one of all of them. Super Bowl 43, it means a lot to me mentally and spiritually because it tested me in those ways. Week 3, Monday Night Football, I blew my Achilles out against the Baltimore Ravens. So I had to watch my team play the rest of the season and win Super Bowl 43. And it put me in a place to where I feel like God kept pulling on me and saying, I'm trying to get your attention. and there's some things that you need to fix and straighten out, and I got some plans for you. So Super Bowl 43 is special in that way to me.
So I'm going to talk about injuries just for a second. You know, guys get injured, and we see them get injured. We just saw Dak Prescott. I mean, a horrible injury.
Yes.
And then they're kind of out of our minds because we don't see them on Sundays anymore. What's it like when you're injured and you can't be of immediate help to your team, especially at the professional level?
You feel insignificant. And I know that's an understatement. That it is so lonesome being injured. They tell you that you still mean a lot, and they're asking you questions, but you feel like you are the only person in the world at that time. And if you don't watch it, you honestly start blaming, asking God, why is he doing this? What did I do to deserve this? And sometimes you can be a little selfish. You don't want the other person to do well because, you know, sometimes it takes that one move for that person to get their shot. And you almost want them not to succeed because I want to get my job back. I don't want them to think that, oh, I found another replacement, especially if it's a new guy that they're not paying a lot. That's what, and it's business. I mean, teams do that. And it's really hard. And you got to have guys who've been through it that are willing to talk to you and see you struggling. I had one guy tell me that the year I tore my ACL, really good friend of mine, because he helped me through my diabetes as well. He said, Kendall, this is your first child. My daughter was born 2 weeks after I tore my ACL. And he said, as a professional athlete, we don't get to see our kids grow up. We don't get a chance, especially if you play for a long time. You miss the lot of little things that's important about being a parent. Take advantage of holding your daughter and help feeding her and changing her diaper. If you wasn't there, your wife have to do all that. So it's now for a chance for you to bond with your child. And like now, my oldest is 16, and me and her are just like that. I mean, she is my absolute twin. We act alike and everything. But I wouldn't have that experience to be able to tell people that if it wasn't for my knee. Now, I was mad. The team went 15-1 that year. And Thom, I'm not going to lie. The reason why I said that guiltiness and me wanting the team to lose came out in me. I'm not lying. They went 15-1. I knew they were going to the Super Bowl. Part of me said, I do not want them to win without me. I want to be out there. And that's just the truth. And any professional athlete tell you that they don't do that, they're lying. They really are, because you want to be able to say, I contributed to a win like that or the team being successful. But the ultimate part was me being able to be a part of my daughter's life, helping my wife out, giving her a chance to be able to not have to deal with her on her own. And that's how I had to see it later on. But it took a lot for me to get to that point and other people to help.
I can go back to college and tell you the one year I was out for 3 games, and you're a part of it, but you're not a part of it anymore.
Exactly.
And they look at, and if you lose one of those games, they look at you like it's your fault. And so you're trying to hurry back, which is the worst thing you can do, probably. It's tough. I think, and you're talking on that professional level, and I think we look at college kids, and you know, we say they're amateurs, and you and I know that that's maybe they don't get paid. Let's put it that way. But it's their job, and and you know that if you're not in there doing your job, somebody else is going to get your job. And so you do feel that thing of, are they going to win without me? You know?
Yes. And you, especially if you know the person behind you has potential, and they're a good player. It's just they got to wait their turn. And so that's where you really start to feel bad, and you start to worry, and you rush back when you know you're not ready to go back out there. It only takes a small percentage of those guys that, no matter how good the guy behind them, you got a Hall of Famer that's hurt. I don't care what this other guy do behind him. He can't take the Hall of Famer spot. It's only just a very small percentage of those people who have that privilege. Everybody else, you still got to prove it. And you can't ever get a big head and think that you're good enough to not be replaced. I mean, because it happens.
You were fortunate, in my opinion. Pittsburgh seems to have, the Steelers have always seemed to be a pretty stable organization.
Yes.
You know, from the front office. And I mean, we were talking about Mike Tomlin has been the coach there now for almost 15 years, which is unheard of in the NFL and even in college, you know. I played for Shug Jordan at Auburn, and he was a coach 25 years, and that probably will never happen again.
That's true.
So you were very fortunate to play for the Steelers, who in some ways look out, who some ways are, let me put it this way, they're an organization first group.
Yes.
So let me ask you a couple of other things, and we're going to bring Mychal and Barbara on. But so you played 84 games when you started 83 games. Man, that's special. That's really special.
Yeah, I was blessed with that. I really was. And being a first round pick, they expect you to contribute right off the bat. You might get your red shirt might be 2 or 3 games just to give you a chance to kind of get acclimated. But after that, we need to throw him in the fire. That's what we drafted him for. And so I got lucky. I really did. But I've always been taught as a kid growing up, give 100% effort and we'll correct the mistakes. Don't ever have nobody ever tell you need to pick it up. And I got a nickname while I was with the Steelers of my O-line coach would call me a bull in a china shop. all I knew was one speed, and I'm going full speed, and I'm hitting anything that moves. Sometimes it's the wrong thing, but that's how I was always taught. And I teach my kids the same thing. Go give me 100% in everything you do, and we'll correct the mistakes as we go. Don't be hesitant, because when you're hesitant, you're going to hurt yourself or somebody else.
Well, you're an analyst for Auburn University, and I want to bring on Mychal and Barbara, but I want to ask you one thing before that. You were, I think I saw you were 315 pounds in the NFL. You're not 315 pounds now. Tell me about the adjustment you had to make dealing with diabetes and just dealing with getting away from football and being a normal human being in a lot of aspects of life.
I tell you what, once I retired, I started speaking for the #1 diabetes company called Novo Nordisk. And it was a blessing for me because I struggled with living with diabetes, like a lot of people do. That job gave me a position to be able to use my platform as a former NFL player and also help me to be accountable for taking care of myself. You can't travel all over the country. And I've spoken in at least every state at least 3 or 4 times as a motivational speaker. And when you're talking to kids and you're speaking to doctors and physicians about your story and how to help people in my position, especially when you're talking to kids, you can't have high blood sugar and be overweight and trying to tell somebody how to live a good lifestyle. You have to follow the same things that you say and you speak and do. So that's what I loved about having this job, because I had to learn how to manage my diabetes better. Because when I'm at a diabetes camp, kids have to eat lunch. Every child checks their blood sugar. They're looking at you like, okay, you here hanging out with us. I know you have diabetes too. Are you going to check your blood sugar with me? It can be scary at times if you check it and you know you were high before you came there, and or you know you've probably eaten something you weren't supposed to. To your numbers being high or low, because the kids look at you like, okay, you know, what's wrong with your numbers? But any factor can have an issue with that. So it helped me to manage myself better because I was a role model. And the one thing I loved about it is that at the end of the day, I'm a better person for it. They gave me a better opportunity. And then also, you talked about losing weight, the accountability of being in front of people. I was still 300 plus pounds, thinking like a lineman, eating like a lineman. And something clicked one day and says, you know what? I can't keep telling people how to live, and I'm still 300 plus pounds and I hadn't played in 5-6 years. So I just started losing weight. I said, you know what? I'm stop lifting. I'm gonna start cycling. I love road biking. I do that. And I got down to my lowest about a year and a half ago. I was 258, and that was the lowest I've been since my sophomore year in high school.
Wow.
Now I'm back around about 270, which is probably going to be where I end up staying at. But I feel better. I don't use as much insulin. And it's just an accountability thing. When you're talking to people about living good way, you got to do the same thing yourself.
Good deal. So tell me this, and then we'll bring out. So had you planned to go in football when you left the NFL? And then tell me about being an analyst, because most people don't know what the coaching staffs have expanded now to include what are called analysts. And so did you plan to go into football, and tell us about being an analyst?
Well, I felt like when I left playing football, I thought about coaching. I came over here the year and I helped the year that we won the national championship when Cam Newton was here. And when I saw what the coaches had to go through, I said, yep, don't want to do this. I was like, recruiting, having to carry 2 phones, you got people left and right. Yeah, I don't want to do this. So I said, you know what, maybe I'll get into helping training players. But then all of a sudden, diabetes came along and I found my niche. I enjoyed that fulfillment more than playing football. When you talk to people and you're real with them on how you struggle with diabetes and deal with different things, and you see the reaction, and you have women and kids and men break down and say, you've helped change my life because I thought I was the only one that felt this way, and you show me that I can do it. I'm like, this is the world I want to be in. And so that's why I still promote and do it as much as possible. But then the speaking started to slow down. When the economy kind of hit, they had cuts, and our company started cutting back. And so I didn't get as many events. I said, you know what, I'm gonna get into scouting. I've always loved the front office and how general managers put teams together. So I did scouting for a little while, but you don't get a chance to interact with the players. You scout a guy, you look at him on film, you do all this background work on him, and you know them, but you never physically get to mold them into what you've learned about them. And I had several people tell me, general managers say, you can't coach and be a scout at the same time. It's either one or the other. You got to choose. And I was stuck. And I finally said, you know what? I'm going to give the coaching a shot. I don't like recruiting. I don't like all that stuff, but maybe I can get over it. And so that's when I asked Coach Malzahn about being an analyst, and he had a spot come open. Now, an analyst, you don't get to coach. That's the part I don't like. You don't get to be as hands-on as a GA or the regular coaches do. So you can say things, but you can't give directions and all that. The one thing this analysts basically do is you kind of like a scout to a degree. You watch a lot of film. You help with game planning and doing different things like that, and the other little minute issues that go on. Getting guys go to class, helping with different things like make sure they got their car tags, registered and their license ain't expired, and a lot of the little things that the coaches don't really have time for. So that's kind of what an analyst does.
Well, one more quick question. So if you're recruiting, why you got to have 2 phones?
For one, you don't want them to have your personal number.
Okay.
And two, they want what they do is they want all the text messaging, the tweeting, and all that stuff to stay separate. Yeah. Because what I didn't realize is that at any point, they can the media or anybody can request your phone records.
Right, because it's public.
And the NCAA and everybody can say, hey, I want to see what you talked about to this kid and all that. So that has to be on there. And it's just a way to keep everything, your personal life and everything else separate.
Okay.
Which I struggle with.
I never thought about that, but yeah, it is all public record. So yeah. Let's bring Barbara and Mychal on, and I'm sure they got some questions for you, Kendall. Okay. Barbara?
Yes, I do have a question for you, Kendall. Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. I felt like I knew you, but now I know a lot more about you. So thank you so much for sharing about yourself today. But after retirement from the NFL, you and your Celeste decided to bring your beautiful family back to Auburn. What made you decide to move back to Auburn?
Honestly, we never left. I always came back here and trained during the off season. And my wife is so tight with her family that I had no other option. to be honest with you. As long as her parents are still alive in Smith Station, Alabama, that's where we were going. We were going to be somewhere near them. If her daddy didn't drive her so crazy, we would probably be up on the hill behind her mama house, some in the land that they have. So I mean, that's just being honest. So, but we love it here. It's always been home to us. It's been good to us, and so I don't foresee us going anywhere unless God decides for us to do something different.
Great, thank you,
Mychal.
Kendall, first of all, congratulations on your success in the NFL and the Super Bowls and what have you. My question is, you played the position of guard on the offensive line. And one question is, have you always played that position, or were you moved to that position? And what's the difference between a guard and a tackle technique side?
Wow, very, very good question. When I first got to Auburn, I was a guard. I actually came here as a defensive lineman and got switched over to offensive line. And so, and my O-line coach was Rick Trickett. And he told me, he said, you're not a defensive lineman. You might want to be, but you can go play defense. And I was over there for like a week. And he said, I'm going to get you one way or another. And he did. What really made me want to play offensive line was, he's like, look, if you want to go to the NFL, you can play longer. You ain't got people cutting your knees out from under you and all kinds of things like that. And you're just built for it. And you'll get a chance to start as a freshman here if you come over and play offensive line. And I told him, I said, look, I don't want to get redshirted. I just want to be on the field. So you just tell me what I need to do. Played guard for a year and a half. And then when that group left, Bowden's group left, Coach Tocqueville came in. And they moved me to tackle. Tackle and guard are two totally different worlds. Thing at guard happens faster. You got bigger, stronger guys on the inside at guard. And tackle, you have to be more patient. You got to be a lot more technique sound outside because you're protecting the quarterback and you can't be as aggressive out there. And that's the difference. Now we have this mold, I guess you could say, that guys and every team look for. I'm 6'3". I don't have the longest arms. And at the time I was playing tackle at 310, 315. Now the standard is you want your tackle to be no shorter than 6'5" to 6'8", 6'9". Guards, you want them to be at least 6'3", 6'4". 6'2.5" is pushing it. And you want your centers to be around 6'2.5" to maybe 6'1 3/4, if that, for leverage purposes. But to me, I see it differently. If you're athletic enough at this level, especially to play tackle, and you got long enough arms, then let's go. I don't really believe in you have to be 6'5" and taller to be able to play that position. But I guess because I feel like I broke the mold with that.
Okay.
How hard is it? And this may not be a fair question, so you can give me a political answer if you want to.
Okay. All right.
How hard is it not to be able to coach the offensive line?
It is very hard, Thom. There's no lie. I'm constantly getting aggravated because I'm like, just cannot do something with them after practice. No, anything, talk to them. And all I can do is verbally tell them what I think they should do. A lot of times what I do is I take film and I break it down and I draw on it with the little marker from the app, from the software, and say, instead of you doing this, this is where you should have said it. Or move your hand from here to here. Or if I can find an example of me playing and show them what I'm talking about, I try to do it that way. And really what it's teaching me is to be more creative in the way I communicate. And sometimes you got some guys that can pick up on it and others need actual physical direction. Kids, I've learned nowadays, they need to see you do it before they can pick up on it. And that's the hardest part for me, is not being able to physically show them, because I'm physically able enough right now to still get my stance, come off the ball, pull, and do everything that I want them to be able to do, but I'm just hindered because of my position.
Okay. Barbara, you got anything else you want to ask?
Yes, let's go back to your diabetes diagnosis, Kendall. What were some of the symptoms? How did you realize you something was wrong and you may have had diabetes? What were the symptoms you were experiencing at age 23?
Uh, yeah, at age 23 years old, I experienced pretty much every symptom involved with diabetes. It started out with weight loss, and then it was thirst, fatigue, and then I was blind for an entire week. I went completely blind for a week.
Wow.
I was living right over in Moore's Mill, right before you go up the hill to the golf course, a little townhouse on the right. And I'm training, and I had just turned 23 years old. And at a point, you train twice a day to get your body acclimated for training camp for the tour days. So I'm coming in and I lose 6 pounds. All right, well, drink some Gatorade. It's just fluids. Get it back. The next day, I lost 13 pounds.
Wow.
Okay, that ain't good. Let's drink some water and get that back. All right. Then the next day I lost 10 pounds. At the end of 2.5 weeks, I lost 2.5 weeks. I lost 45 pounds in 2.5 weeks. I felt bad. I couldn't get off the couch. And it was so bad to the point where it seemed like every 5 minutes I was going to the bathroom. And my wife was like, "Are you going in there again? What is going on with you?" And at the end of all of this, my father-in-law said, "I knew something was wrong with you, but you were moving around and you were so into going and so had tunnel vision of trying to get ready to go. I was afraid to say anything." And so I left Auburn, Alabama, and drove 13 hours by myself, easily with my blood sugars around 400-500. And what I didn't realize was trying to quench my thirst, I was drinking water and it wasn't doing it for me. So I would get a Gatorade, tea, everything that had sugar in it, and running my blood sugar high and high. By the time I got there, the team trainer sent me to the team doctor. He said, "Okay, what are your symptoms?" I told him. He took a quick blood test, and all of a sudden, he said, "Look, we need to get you to the emergency room." I got in the emergency room. They put me in. I completely lost my vision. I don't remember anything that happened for about 3 days. Even to this day, I still don't know what happened. My blood sugars were like 1100, which is 10 times higher than the normal person. And they told me, said, if you wasn't so athletic and young, you would have went into a diabetic coma. So I was blessed driving by myself and making it to Pittsburgh by myself, feeling the way I did. My wife drove up the next day, and no lie, guys, she was this far from my face and I couldn't see her at all.
Wow.
I mean, and that was the scariest moment of my entire life, being 23 years old. I had just won Rookie of the Year for the NFL, for the team. Started every game, won a Joe Green Award. I'm flying high, and now I'm in the hospital. I can't see at all. And you're telling me I have a disease that I know nothing about, And all I've heard about it is, y'all know what it's called. It's called sugar in the South.
Yeah.
And my grandmother had it, but I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was an older person taking shots and all that. So it was scary. It really was. And at that time, I thought I was done playing ball. I actually didn't know whether I was going to make it out the hospital, to be honest with you. So it was a challenge for me.
Mychal, you got more questions for Kendall?
Yes, I have one more question. And Kendall, that's inspirational. And,
yeah, it is.
Just to hear that and how you went through that and how close you were to something being devastating to you. So, prayers up for you and stuff. And I hope you can continue to manage that. My question is, I'm going to flip the script a little bit. I'm a business person, and the lifeblood of a business is your customer base and your market and your ability to be able, you can't grow your business if you're constantly losing customers. You can't replace them with enough. So sports is a business. We all know that. Football is a business. In this day and age of the transfer portal, this player's transfer, it seems that some programs have more transfers than others.
Yes.
And then you'll hear a person say, well, we're young, we're inexperienced. Well, I'm fairly logical. To me, you're going to always be young and inexperienced if you're constantly losing players to the transfer portal that's been there a couple years rather, and then you're bringing them with new, and then you're shoveling the new people in. What would you tell me as a coach or owner, if I'm constantly going through that, how do I negate that and mitigate that and stop that so that I'm not always a young, experienced team and I have depth?
The best way I can answer that is you have to do a better job in your evaluation process. You have to. I'm speaking from what I've experienced. You got to go as deep as the FBI goes when you're learning about a person's personality and what they can handle and the position you put them in. You know when you get a player in, whether this person is high maintenance or not, whether they can handle pressure, or are they really a player? Do they live up to what their stars or whatever it may be is? And I see a lot of it come is you promise somebody a lot of things and you mean well-intentioned, but you don't really tell them and emphasize that you have to earn everything you get.
Right.
I feel like the biggest problem with this generation right now is instant gratification. If you tell them something in recruiting and the way you do things, they want to see that happen immediately. They don't realize that once you step on campus, there are people just as good, if not better than you. And you're not just going to get put in front of somebody and there's a learning curve. It really is. And they cannot handle that because they have not been pushed from the time they were prep star or mighty might or in the midget league. They've been the best thing ever. And nobody has really pushed them and say, no, you're doing that wrong. I need you to do it this way. This is what you got to do to prove. They just let them go. And when you get here, it's a culture shock for them. And then it's, be honest, on another level too. You give them the ball and just say, go score. They haven't been taught the intricacies of playing the game. Or, being honest, they just don't have it here. So they struggle and they wonder why they can't get on the field. And you're trying to tell them and you try to simplify things and they just can't get it. There's a lot of things that factor into that. Now, not saying it's all their fault. The coach has a lot to do with that too. If they just find any little thing minutely wrong about a person that they don't like, they have a hard time letting it go. And I'm speaking from a completely godly professional way, he's given us so many blessings and been merciful to us. Why can't you give this guy several chances? You know, in your path coming up to being a coach and a player, you've had so many opportunities and people have forgiven you and you got a lot of chances. Why not have the same grace with this guy? Now, at some point, when you say, hey, I've told you multiple times and you don't want to listen to me, then you got to let that person move on. If you're not going to class and you don't want to go to class, I'm going to lose my job if I keep letting you do this, because then you're not accountable to your teammates or yourself and you're missing assignments. I can't keep doing that. So there's a lot of factors into it. And I feel like a lot of it is we got to do a better job when these kids grow up and they show potential. They have to be held accountable, because right now, this is me. We hold their hand way too much. When they don't make it to the NFL and they don't graduate, they don't contribute to society. They don't help at all. They leave here in the same spot, if not worse, when they got here. And that's a failure on our part as coaches and as men, as we don't help them grow and to try to help society, because less than 1% of them are going to make it professionally at all. And then they looking back at us and mad. Their mom and dad is mad. It's like, you didn't help my child. No, we didn't help him. We fed you a whole bunch of crap in the beginning, and we could do a better job. Now, some of us try to help, but the kid, they need help from home too. They got to be helped at home also. We have so many people that we're trying to help. It's hard to try to help all of them and keep your own house in order as well. So that's the best way I can answer that for you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
Great
that.
answer. I do think that, working with the kids, I don't know, just from my experience, I saw a lot of guys who didn't make it. And that's why it was so important, I think, graduation was so important. And, you know, looking back, being the first Black athlete to graduate from the university, and the legacy that athletics has and that older athletes have for the younger athletes, and hopefully they can see that, they can see the benefits of that and see how they can benefit by hanging in there and seeing it through.
Yes.
I've got good friends now who left and finished at another school, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same for them, and you know, probably wasn't the same for us as well. So let me ask you one more thing, and this is just from playing standpoint. That lineman get to hold now, man.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. As long as your hands inside the framework, I'm telling you, I held all the time.
It's hard to figure out what's holding and what's not holding, you know?
Yeah,
Right.
So, Kendall, I appreciate it. And I'd like to say, Kendall invited me to speak to the team. Kendall and Coach Malzahn invited me to speak to the team this past summer, and I really enjoyed that. And it was virtual, which was another adjustment we made.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun. I appreciate that, man. Thank you. Thank you.
No problem, man. You made a lasting impact on this team, and people still talk about it. So that's the one thing that I learned from you, and just being around other people like yourself. When you're authentic and you show people who you are, we get more out of it, and we appreciate it more. So I appreciate you doing that.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us, man. It's great. I'm going to, hopefully I'll see you again soon, but thank you so much, Kendall. We appreciate it.
I appreciate you too, man. Thank y'all for having me on.
Okay, brother. I want to thank, that's our show for today. I want to thank the audience. I appreciate you. I want to leave you with this thought today. When you have a special guest like Kendall Simmons, who is as graceful as they come, you have to end with a thought and words that reflect his gracefulness. And so this is one of the things that's on my office wall, actually right behind my computer. And it says, living on this earth does not matter if we have lived with grace. And fundamentally, we know that living on this earth with grace is all that matters. If we have not lived on this earth gracefully, it will be very difficult to leave this earth gracefully. I want to thank Mychal, Barbara, thank Kendall Simmons. I want to thank our sponsor, Best Girl. If you're interested in having your business be a sponsor of the show, get in touch with me at Thom at Best Girl. I want to thank Emily Hedrick, the communicator, our producer. Our guest next week will be John Lux from Film Florida, as we get into the ins and outs of the film and television business that has now expanded outside of Los Angeles. We will see you then. Enjoy yourself, and remember, every day counts. Peace. Thank you.